Good evening, everybody. Tonight I bring you another story from the Grimm Brothers fairy tales. I know it's been a very long time, so I'm very excited to bring you more stories to help you go to sleep. So tonight we're gonna be reading Sweet Porridge. I'm a little scared. There was a poor but good little girl who lived alone with her mother, and they no longer had anything to eat. So the child went into the forest, and there an aged woman met her who was aware of her sorrow, and presented her with a little pot which, when she said, "Cook, little pot, cook," would cook good, sweet porridge, and when she said, "Stop, little pot," it ceased to cook. The girl took the pot home to her mother, and now they were freed from their poverty and hunger, and ate sweet porridge as often as they chose. Once on a time, when the girl had gone out, her mother said, "Cook, little pot, cook." And it did cook, and she ate till she was satisfied, and then she wanted the pot to stop cooking, but did not know the words. So it went on cooking, and the porridge rose over the edge, and still it cooked on until the kitchen and the whole house were full, and then the next house, and then the whole street, just as it wanted to satisfy the hunger of the whole world. And there was the greatest distress, but no one knew how to stop it. At last, when only one single house remained, the child came home and just said, "Stop, little pot," and it popped, and it stopped and gave up cooking, and whosoever wished to return to the town had to eat his way back. The end. Well, that was actually kind of funny. The Grimm brothers really do have some strange short little tales. Seems like it's gonna be a little bit longer, which is nice. It's called The Elves. There was once a shoemaker who, through no fault of his own, became so poor that at last he had nothing left but just enough leather to make one pair of shoes. He cut up the shoes at night so as to set to work upon them next morning, and as he had no good conscience, he laid himself quietly down on his bed, committed himself to heaven, and fell asleep. In the morning, after he had said his prayers and was going to get to work, he found the pair of shoes made and finished and standing on his table. He was very much astonished and could not tell what to think, and he took the shoes in his hand to examine them more closely. And they were so well made that every stitch was in its right place, just as if they had come from the hand of a master workman. Soon after, a purchaser entered, and as the shoes fitted him very well, he gave more than the usual price for them, so that the shoemaker had enough money to buy leather for 2 more pairs of shoes. He cut them out at night, and intended to set to work the next morning with fresh spirit, but that was not to be, for when he got up they were already finished, and even a customer was not lacking, who gave him so much money that he was able to buy leather enough for 4 new pairs. Early next morning he found the pairs also finished, and so it always happened. Wherever he cut out in the evening was worked up by the morning, so that he was soon in the way of making a good living, and in the end became very well to do. One night, not long before Christmas, when the shoemaker had finished cutting out, and before he went to bed, he said to his wife, "How would it be if we were to sit up tonight and see who it is that does us this service?" His wife agreed and lit a light to burn. Then they both hid in a corner of the room behind some coats that were hanging up, and then they began to watch. As soon as it was midnight, they saw come in 2 neatly formed naked little men, who seated themselves before the shoemaker's table, and took up the work that was already prepared, and began to stitch, to pierce, and to hammer so cleverly and quickly with their little fingers that the shoemaker's eyes could scarcely follow them, so full of wonder was he. And they never left off until everything was finished and was standing ready on the table, and then they jumped off and ran off. The next morning, the shoemaker's wife said to her husband, "Those little men have made us rich, and we ought to show ourselves grateful. With all their running about and having nothing to cover them, they must be very cold. I'll tell you what, I will make little shirts, coats, waistcoats, and breeches for them, and knit each of them a pair of stockings, and you shall make each of them a pair of shoes." The husband consented willingly, and at night, when everything was finished, they laid the gifts together on the table, instead of the cut-out work, and placed themselves so that they could observe how the little men could behave. When midnight came, they rushed in, ready to set to work. But when they found, instead of the pieces of repaired leather, the neat little garments put ready for them, they stood a moment in surprise, and then they showed the greatest delight. With the greatest swiftness, they took up the pretty garments and slipped them on, singing, "What spruce and dandy boys are we! No longer cobblers we will be!" Then they hopped and danced about, jumping over the chairs and tables, and at last they danced out of the door. From that time they were never seen again, but it always went well with the shoemaker as long as he lived, and wherever he took in his hand prospered. Part 2. There was once a poor servant maid who was very cleanly and industrious. She swept down the house every day and put the sweepings on a great heap by the door. One morning, before she began her work, she found a letter, and as she could not read, she laid her broom in the corner and took the letter to her master and mistress to see what it was about. And it was an invitation from the Elves, who wished the maid to come and stand godmother to one of their children. The maid did not know what to do, and as she was told that no one ought to refuse the Elves anything, she made up her mind to go. So there came 3 little elves who conducted her into the middle of a high mountain where the little people lived. Here everything was of a very small size, but more fine and elegant than can be told. The mother of the child lay in bed, made of ebony, stuffed with pearls. The counterpane was embroidered with gold, and the cradle was of ivory, and the bathtub of gold. So the maid stood godmother, and was then for going home, but the elves begged her to stay at least 3 more days with them, and so she consented, and spent the time in mirth and jollity, and the elves seemed very fond of her. At last, when she was ready to go away, they filled her pockets full of gold, and led her back again out of the mountains. When she got back to the house, she was going to begin working again, and took her broom in her hand. It was still standing in the corner where she had left it, and began to sweep. Then came upon some strangers, and asked her who she was, and what she was doing. And she found out that instead of 3 days, she had been 7 years with the elves in the mountain, and that during that time her master and mistress had died. The end. Part 3. The elves once took a child away from its mother, and left it in its place a changeling with a big head and staring eyes, who did nothing but eat and drink. The mother in her trouble went to their neighbors and asked their advice. The neighbors told her that to take the changeling into the kitchen and put it near the hearth, and then to make up the fire and boil water in 2 eggshells. That would make the changeling laugh, and if he laughed, it would be all over with him. So the woman did as her neighbors advised, and when she set the eggshells of water on the fire, the changeling said, "Though old I be as forest tree, cooking in an eggshell shall never did I see," and began to laugh. And directly there came in a crowd of elves, bringing in the right child, and they laid it near the hearth and carried the changeling away with them. The end. That one was a strange one as well. These are some very fun stories, I'm not gonna lie. Okay, let's do a couple more. Doesn't seem that this will be good enough to go to bed tonight. So, next story. Fair Catronilgy and Piff Paff Poultry. Try saying that 3 times fast. Good day, Father Holthy. Many thanks, Piff Paff Poultry. May I be allowed to have your daughter? Oh yes, if Mother Malcho, Milch Cow, Brother High and Mighty, Sister Castle-Trout, and Fair Catronilgy are willing, you can have her. Where is Mother Malcho then? She is in the cow-house, milking the cow. Good day, Mother Malcho. Many thanks, Piff Paff Poultry. May I be allowed to have your daughter? Oh yes, if Father Holthy, Brother High and Mighty, Sister Castle-Trout, and Fair Catronilgy are willing, you can have her. Where is Brother High and Mighty then? He is in the room chopping some wood. Good day, Brother High and Mighty. Many thanks, Piff Paff Poultry. May I be allowed to have your sister? Oh yes, if Father Holthy, Mother Malcho, Sister Castle-Trout, and Fair Catronilgy are willing, you can have her. Where is Sister Castle-Trout, then? She is in the garden cutting cabbages. Good day, Sister Castle-Trout. Many thanks, Piff Paff Poultry. May I be allowed to have your sister? Oh yes, if Father Holthy, Mother Malcho, Brother High and Mighty, and Fair Catronilgy are willing, you may have her. Where is Fair Catronilgy, then? She is in the room counting out her farthings. Good day, fair Katrine. Many thanks, Pif-Paff Poultry. Wilt thou be my bride? Oh, yes, if Father Holfy, Mother Malcho, Brother High and Mighty, and Sister Castrout are willing, I am ready. Fair Katrine, how much dowry hast thou? 14 farthings is in ready money, 3.5 groschen owing to me, 1/2 pound of dried apples, a handful of fried bread, and a handful of spices. And many other things are mine. Have I not a dowry fine? Pif-Paff Poultry, what is thy trade? Art thou a tailor? Something better. A shoemaker? Something better. A husbandman? Something better. A joiner? Something better. A smith? Something better. A miller? Something better. Perhaps a broom maker? Yes, that's what I am. Is it not a fine trade? The end. Again, I want everybody to let me know what they think of these stories, because they are definitely quite interesting. So I think we'll do one more and we'll be done for tonight. This one's a short one. The Old Beggar Woman. There was once an old woman, who thou hast surely seen an old woman go a-begging before now? This woman begged likewise, and when she got anything she said, May God reward you. The beggar woman came to a door, and there by the fire a friendly rogue of a boy was standing warming himself. The boy said kindly to the poor old woman, as she was standing shivering thus by the door, Come, old mother, and warm yourself. She came in, but stood too near to the fire, so that her old rags began to burn, and she was not aware of this. The boy stood and saw that, but he ought to have put the flames out, and if he could not find any water, then should he have wept all the water in his body out of his eyes, and that would have supplied 2 fine streams with which to extinguish them. The end. Again, please everybody let me know in the comments what you think of these stories. Do you think they are supposed to give us a message, or maybe they are just interesting tales for the kids at the time? They definitely are quite confusing, funny to me at least. But I hope all of you guys have a good night and that you enjoyed our little stories, and I hope to see you guys sooner this time. Good night.